In the underworld of 1998 New York, silence was usually a precursor to violence. If the music stopped, you reached for your gun. But on a freezing Tuesday night at the Gilded Lily, a whisper changed the trajectory of the entire East Coast crime syndicate. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a plea for mercy. It was a prayer, spoken in a Sicilian dialect that had been dead for 40 years. When Don Stefano Valenti heard it, he didn't pull the trigger. He stopped his heart. This is the true, untold story of how 6 holy words brought an empire to its knees and exposed a 20-year-old betrayal. To understand why the room fell silent, you first have to understand the room. The Gilded Lily on West 4th Street wasn't just a restaurant. In the police reports filed by the NYPD Organized Crime Control Bureau in the late 90s, it was designated as a Category A neutral zone. It was a sanctuary. You could eat the best ossobuco in Manhattan there, but you couldn't conduct business, and you certainly couldn't kill anyone. That night, December the 12th, the air was thick enough to choke on. At the corner table, table 9, always table 9, sat Stefano Valenti. At 34, Stefano wasn't the stereotypical Don. The FBI files described him as the architect. He didn't scream, he whispered. He didn't break thumbs, he dissolved assets. He was the head of the Valenti crime family, a man who had modernized the brutal traditions of his father into a corporate machine. He wore bespoke charcoal suits, drank sparkling water, and possessed eyes that looked like shattered grey glass. Sitting across from him was his capo, Rocco the Bull Moretti. Rocco was the old guard, loud, abrasive, and wearing enough gold to sink a gondola. He was drunk on power and expensive Chianti. The restaurant was understaffed. A flu had swept through the kitchen, leaving the floor manager scrambling. That was how Sophia, a 24-year-old waitress who had been working there for only 3 weeks, ended up assigned to table 9. Sophia didn't look like she belonged in the Gilded Lily. She was too thin, her uniform hung loosely on her frame, and she kept her dark hair pulled back in a severe, tight bun. She kept her head down, her eyes fixed on the floorboards. She was invisible. That was by design. "More wine," Rocco barked, slamming his empty glass onto the white tablecloth. Sophia moved quickly, too quickly. As she reached over to pour the vintage Barolo, Rocco shifted his weight, his elbow knocking into her arm. The bottle slipped. Time seemed to warp. The dark red liquid splashed across the pristine white cloth. But worse, it splattered onto the lap of Rocco's silk trousers. The restaurant went dead quiet. Forks hovered halfway to mouths. The piano player in the corner abruptly stopped mid-chord. Every eye in the establishment turned to table 9. In the Valenti circles, disrespect was a currency, and spilling wine on a capo was a debt paid in blood. Rocco stood up, his chair scraping violently against the wood floor. His face was a mask of purple rage. "You stupid bitch," Rocco hissed, his hand raising. The backhand was coming. Everyone knew it. The security guards at the door looked away. They saw nothing. Sophia didn't flinch. She didn't scream. She did something that made no sense to the Americans in the room, but meant everything to the man sitting in the shadows. She squeezed her eyes shut, clutched the silver crucifix hidden beneath her uniform, and whispered. It was barely audible. A breath, a ghost of a sound. "Santu Michele, teni l'occhio malo lontano, lo sangue non c'è ma sangue." Saint Michael, keep the evil eye away. Blood does not call to blood. It was Sicilian. But it wasn't the Italian you learned in school, and it wasn't the slang spoken on the streets of Brooklyn. It was a pre-war dialect, specific to the mountain villages outside of Corleone. It was a prayer of the wives, a chant used by women when their husbands were about to commit violence, meant to bind their hands with guilt. Rocco didn't care. His hand came down. "Fermo. Stop." The word was spoken softly, but it cracked through the room like a whip. Rocco froze. His hand was inches from Sophia's face. He turned slowly to look at his boss. Stefano Valenti hadn't moved. He was still sitting, his legs crossed. His fingers steepled under his chin, but his grey eyes were locked on the waitress. He was looking at her as if she were a ghost that had just walked through the wall. "Boss, she ruined the suit," Rocco stammered, his bravado leaking out. "Sit down, Rocco," Stefano said. His voice was devoid of emotion, which made it terrifying. But, "Sit down." Rocco sat. The tension in the room was electric. The patrons held their breath, waiting for the execution. Stefano stood up. He was tall, looming over the table. He walked around to where Sofia stood, trembling. She kept her eyes squeezed shut, waiting for the blow. Stefano leaned in close, his mouth inches from her ear. "Where did you learn that prayer?" he asked. Sofia opened her eyes. They were amber, bright, startlingly gold against her pale skin. Fear swam in them, but behind the fear was something else. Defiance. "My grandmother," she whispered. "What is your name?" "Sofia." "Sofia who?" She hesitated. A fraction of a second. A heartbeat of a lie. "Sofia Ricci." Stefano stared at her. He studied the curve of her jaw, the shape of her eyes, the way her hands trembled. He reached into his jacket pocket. The room flinched. He pulled out a money clip. He peeled off 5 $100 bills, more than she made in a month, and placed them gently into her apron pocket. "Go to the back," Stefano said. "Stay there until I leave. Do not come out." "Namatkamu." Sofia nodded, breathless, and bolted for the kitchen. Stefano returned to his seat. He picked up his napkin and dabbed a drop of wine from the table. "Rocco," Stefano said, his eyes never leaving the kitchen door. "Yeah, boss? Find out who hired her. Find out where she lives. And if you touch a hair on her head, I will kill you myself." The rain had turned into sleet by the time Stefano exited the Gilded Lily. His driver, a mute giant named Bruno, held the umbrella, but Stefano ignored it, letting the icy water hit his face. He needed the cold. He needed to clear the fog of the past that had just engulfed him. That dialect, Arboresh-influenced Sicilian. Stefano hadn't heard those specific inflections since he was a boy of 6, hiding under the heavy oak table in his grandfather's villa in Palermo. It was the dialect of the Guardians, an elite, almost extinct circle of families who served as the keepers of the old laws. There were only 3 families who spoke that way: the Valentis, the Rossis, and the D'Amicos. The Rossis were all dead, wiped out in the clan wars of '82. The Valentis were here, ruling New York, and the D'Amicos. Stefano climbed into the back of the armored Mercedes. The leather seats creaked. "Where to, boss?" Bruno asked, watching him in the rear-view mirror. "The office," Stefano said. "And get me the file on the D'Amico purge, the 1978 files." Bruno's eyes widened slightly in the mirror, but he said nothing. He put the car in gear. While the city blurred past the tinted windows, Stefano's mind raced. The D'Amico family had been the closest allies of the Valentis. Matteo D'Amico had been Stefano's father's best friend. But in 1978, the narrative changed. Stefano was told that Matteo had turned traitor, selling secrets to the feds. Stefano's father had ordered the hit. The entire D'Amico line was erased in a single night. A fire, an accidental gas leak that leveled their estate in upstate New York. No survivors. That was the official history. But that prayer, blood does not call to blood, it was a D'Amico family motto. Back at the restaurant, Sofia was hyperventilating in the walk-in freezer. The cold air burned her lungs. She pressed her back against the boxes of frozen veal, trying to stop her hands from shaking. She had slipped. She had made the one mistake she promised her nonna she would never make. She drew attention to herself. She wasn't Sofia Ricci. Her name was Sofia D'Amico. She didn't know the full history. Her grandmother had kept the bloody details from her. All she knew was that her last name was a death sentence. She knew that bad men had killed her parents, and that she had to remain invisible to stay alive. She had moved 5 times in 6 years. She dyed her hair. She wore baggy clothes. She worked cash jobs. Tonight, she had stared into the eyes of the devil himself, Stefano Valenti. and he had given her $500. Why? The kitchen door swung open. It was the manager, Paolo. He looked pale. "Sophia," he hissed, "you can go. Shift's over." "It's only 9, she said, her voice trembling. "I don't care. The big guy. Valenti. He left, but his guy, the one with the gold chains, he's been asking questions about your employment forms. I don't want trouble." Paolo shoved an envelope of cash at her. "Take your week's pay. Don't come back." Fired. Again. Sophia grabbed her coat, a threadbare wool trench, and ran out the back exit into the alleyway. The alley was dark, smelling of wet garbage and ozone. She pulled her collar up, keeping her head down, walking fast towards the subway station. She needed to get home, grab her emergency bag, and run. If they were asking for her papers, they would find out they were fake. She turned the corner onto Bleecker Street, and a black sedan curb-crawled slowly beside her. Sophia's heart hammered against her ribs. She didn't run. Running triggered the predator drive. She kept walking. The passenger window rolled down. "Hey, sweetheart." It wasn't Stefano. It was Rocco, the bull. Sophia stopped. There were people on the street, a couple walking a dog, a group of students. She was safe, right? Rocco leaned out of the window. He was smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You forgot your tip." "Mr. Valenti gave me a tip," Sophia said, her voice steady despite the terror gripping her throat. "Yeah, well, Stefano has a soft spot for stray dogs." "I don't." Rocco opened the car door. Sophia bolted. She sprinted down Bleecker, weaving through the pedestrians. "Help!" she screamed. But this was New York. People didn't step in. They stepped back. She heard heavy footsteps behind her. Rocco was fast for a big man. She ducked into a subway entrance, vaulting the turnstile. She could hear Rocco cursing behind her. She ran down the stairs to the platform just as the number 6 train was screeching into the station. The doors opened. She threw herself inside. The doors hissed shut just as Rocco reached the platform. He slammed his fist against the glass, mouthing words that would haunt her nightmares. "I will find you." Sophia sank to the dirty floor of the subway car, gasping for air. She was safe for now. But she knew the rules of the jungle. The hunt had begun. Scene shift. The penthouse. 2 hours later, Stefano sat in his office overlooking the skyline. The room was dark, lit only by the city lights. On his desk lay a yellowed file folder marked Operation Nero. He flipped it open. Photos of the crime scene from 1978, the burnt-out shell of the D'Amico house. Bodies covered in white sheets. He scanned the coroner's report. Matteo D'Amico, deceased. Elena D'Amico, deceased. Lucia D'Amico, daughter, age 4, presumed deceased. Remains inconclusive due to fire damage. Stefano tapped his finger on the words "remains inconclusive." The intercom buzzed. "Boss," Bruno's voice crackled. "Rocco is back. He's agitated. Send him in." The doors opened and Rocco stormed in. He looked wet and furious. She ran. Rocco spat, pouring himself a drink without asking. "Little rat is fast. But I got her address from the manager before I left." Stefano rotated his chair slowly. "You went after her?" "I was just gonna scare her. Teach her some respect." "I told you," Stefano said, his voice dropping an octave, "not to touch her." "Why do you care?" Rocco slammed the glass down. "She's a nobody, a waitress who embarrassed me." Stefano stood up. He walked over to Rocco, moving with the predatory grace of a panther. He grabbed Rocco by the lapels of his expensive suit and slammed him against the mahogany wall. "She is not a nobody," Stefano whispered, his face inches from his capos. "And if you go near her again, I will forget that we grew up together. Do you understand?" Rocco's eyes bulged. He had never seen Stefano this protective over a civilian. Okay, Stefano. Jesus, let go." Stefano released him. Rocco straightened his jacket, looking shaken. "Get out," Stefano said. Rocco left, but the look in his eyes wasn't fear anymore. It was suspicion. And in the Mafia, Suspicion was more dangerous than a bullet. Stefano waited until he was alone. He picked up the phone and dialed a number that didn't exist in any phone book. "It's me," Stefano said. "I need a surveillance team on an address in Queens, 42nd Street, apartment 4B. The name is Sofia Ricci." He paused, looking at the photo of the 4-year-old girl in the file. "And send a team to dig up the grave of Matteo D'Amico. I need to know if he was really in that house when it burned." The silence on the other end was heavy. "That's dangerous ground, Stefano," the voice on the phone said. "Digging up the past creates ghosts." "The ghosts are already here," Stefano replied. "One of them just served me wine." The drive to Queens took 40 minutes. In that time, Stefano Valenti didn't speak. He sat in the back of the armored S-Class, watching the city devolve from the high-rises of Manhattan to the brick-row claustrophobia of Astoria. He was breaking his own rules. Rule #1. Never get personally involved in the groundwork. Rule #2. Never let a civilian dictate your schedule. But the prayer haunted him. Santo Michele. It was a key that unlocked a door he thought had been bricked up 20 years ago. "Block is quiet," Bruno rumbled from the front seat as they turned onto 42nd Street. "Too quiet." Stefano looked out. The streetlights were out on the left side of the block. A classic setup. "Stop here," Stefano ordered. "Keep the engine running. If I'm not back in 10 minutes, you come in. Guns out." Bruno nodded, clicking the safety off his Glock 19. Stefano stepped out into the rain. He didn't look like a don now. He looked like a shadow in a long charcoal coat. He moved silently towards the entrance of the tenement building. The front door lock was broken, an everyday occurrence in this neighborhood, but tonight it felt like an invitation. He took the stairs 2 at a time, his hand resting on the Beretta holstered at his hip. 4th floor, apartment 4B. The door to 4B wasn't locked. It was ajar, just an inch. Stefano drew his weapon. He nudged the door open with his foot. The apartment was a wreck. It wasn't just searched, it was eviscerated. Mattresses slashed, drawers dumped, floorboards pried up. This wasn't Rocco's style. Rocco was a hammer. He smashed things. This was the work of a scalpel. Someone was looking for something specific. Paperwork. Proof. "Sofia?" Stefano called out. His voice low. Silence. He moved through the debris. The kitchen was empty. The tiny bathroom was empty. He checked the fire escape window. It was painted shut. She hadn't gone out that way. Then he heard it. A muffled sound from the bedroom closet. A whimper. Stefano approached the closet slowly. "Sofia, it's Stefano Valenti." The door burst open. Sofia didn't come out cowering. She came out swinging. She held a rusted tire iron, swinging it with a desperate, terrified strength. Stefano caught her wrist mid-swing. He didn't hurt her. He just stopped the momentum. He twisted her arm gently until she dropped the iron. It clanged heavily onto the floor. She was hyperventilating, her eyes wide and feral. She was wearing a backpack, ready to run. "Let me go!" she screamed, thrashing against his grip. "I didn't tell them anything, I swear!" "Stop," Stefano said, pulling her close to restrain her. She smelled of cheap soap and terror. "Sofia, look at me." She struggled, kicking at his shins. "You sent them! You sent those men!" "I sent no one," Stefano said, his voice hard but calm. "If I wanted you dead, you would not have heard me coming. Look at the room, Sofia. Who did this?" Sofia stopped fighting. She looked around the destroyed apartment, trembling. "2 men," she whispered. They wore masks. They weren't Italians. They spoke Russian, maybe? I hid in the crawl space behind the closet. They were looking for the ledger. Stefano's blood ran cold. The ledger, the myth of the D'Amico ledger. It was rumored that Matteo D'Amico had kept a book detailing every bribe paid to judges, senators, and cops in the 70s. It was the insurance policy that was supposed to keep his family safe. When the house burned, everyone assumed the ledger burned with it. "Do you have it?" Stefano asked, gripping her shoulders. "Sofia, listen to me. Do you have the book?" "I don't know what you're talking about," she cried. "I just have my grandmother's Bible. That's all I have." Crash! Glass shattered in the living room. Stefano spun around, shoving Sofia behind him. A canister rolled across the floor, hissing. Smoke, tear gas. "Bruno!" Stefano shouted into his lapel mic. "We have company! 4th floor!" Two figures emerged from the smoke in the hallway. They were dressed in tactical black, moving with military precision. Not street thugs, mercenaries. One raised a suppressed submachine gun. Stefano didn't hesitate. He fired 3 shots. 2 hit the doorframe, forcing the attacker back. The third hit the lead man in the shoulder. "Move!" Stefano grabbed Sofia's hand. "Where?" She coughed, the gas stinging her eyes. "The roof!" They ran out into the hallway, just as bullets began to chew up the drywall behind them. Stefano kicked open the stairwell door. They scrambled up the concrete steps, the sound of heavy boots pursuing them. They burst onto the rooftop. The rain was torrential now. The city lights were a blur of cold neon. "Jump!" Stefano ordered, pointing to the adjacent building. It was a 5-foot gap, 4 stories up. "Are you crazy?" Sofia yelled. "Do you want to die in Queens, Sofia?" Stefano looked at her. His grey eyes were fierce, alive. "Or do you want to live?" The stairwell door behind them groaned under the impact of a battering ram. Sofia looked at the gap. She looked at Stefano. She ran. She leapt across the alleyway, her boots skidding on the wet gravel of the next roof. She nearly fell backward, but Stefano had already jumped behind her, grabbing her coat and hauling her onto the solid surface. They didn't stop. They sprinted across the rooftops of the row houses until they reached the fire escape of a building 3 doors down. They scrambled down the iron ladder, dropping into the back alley. Bruno's car screeched around the corner, tires smoking. The back door flew open. "Get in!" Bruno roared. Stefano shoved Sofia into the leather interior and dove in after her. "Go! West Side Highway!" Stefano barked. As the car sped away, Sofia slumped against the door, shivering violently. She was soaked. Her life was in ruins, and she was sitting next to the most dangerous man in New York. Stefano reached into the minibar built into the armrest. He poured a glass of brandy. He didn't drink it. He handed it to her. "Drink," he said. She stared at the glass. "Why are you helping me?" Stefano looked out the window, watching the rain streak the glass. He didn't answer immediately. He waited until they were merging onto the highway, the lights of the city reflecting in his eyes. "Because," Stefano said softly, "blood does not call to blood." Sofia froze. She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time. "You know," she whispered. "I suspect," he corrected, "and until I know the truth, no one touches you. Not Rocco, not the Russians. No one." He turned to her. "Welcome to my world, Sofia D'Amico." The safe house wasn't a bunker. It was a fortress in the sky. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse of the Obsidian Tower in Tribeca. It was Stefano's private sanctuary, a place unknown even to his capos. Only Bruno knew this address. The apartment was cold, decorated in minimalism. Black marble floors, steel beams, floor-to-ceiling windows that turned the city into a silent movie. It was beautiful, but it felt like a cage. A glass cage. "Bruno, stay in the lobby," Stefano commanded as the elevator doors closed. "No one comes up. If Rocco calls, I'm unreachable." Stefano walked into the living room, shedding his wet coat. He threw it onto a leather chair. Underneath, his white dress shirt was damp, clinging to his chest. The shoulder holster was stark against the white fabric. Sofia stood by the elevator, dripping water onto the marble. She still clutched her backpack to her chest like a shield. "You can put the bag down," Stefano said, walking to the kitchen island. "You're safe here." "Am I?" Sofia asked, her voice raspy. "You're the head of the Valenti family. The Valentis killed my parents." Stefano paused. He didn't turn around. He poured 2 glasses of water. "That is the story," he said. "Yes." "It's not a story. It's history. Sophia stepped further into the room, anger overriding her fear. My grandmother told me everything. Matteo D'Amico was a good man. Your father, Don Giovanni, got greedy. He wanted the unions. He burned them alive. Stefano turned around, handing her the water. His expression was unreadable. My father was a ruthless man, Stefano admitted, but he was a man of code. He killed traitors. He killed enemies. But he never killed children, and he never used fire. Fire is for cowards. It destroys the evidence. He took a sip of his water. When I heard you pray tonight, Stefano continued, I realized something. If Lucia D'Amico survived, then the fire wasn't an execution. It was a cover-up. Sophia stared at him. Her legs felt weak. She sank onto one of the bar stools. I don't remember it, she whispered. I was 4. I just remember the heat. And Nonna grabbing me, running through the woods. She told me never to speak our name. She said the Valentis have eyes everywhere. We do, Stefano said. But so do others. He walked around the island and stood in front of her. The distance between them closed. The air in the room shifted. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was an intense, magnetic curiosity. You need dry clothes, he said, breaking the tension. Go to the bedroom. There's a robe in the closet. The shower is hot. I'm not taking a shower in your house. Sophia, Stefano said, his voice dropping to that dangerous soft register. You are covered in subway dirt and tear gas. You are shaking. Go, wash. We talk after. It wasn't a request. Sophia glared at him one last time, then grabbed her bag and marched into the hallway. Stefano waited until he heard the door click shut. He exhaled, a long, ragged breath. He leaned against the counter, his hands gripping the marble edge until his knuckles turned white. He was walking a razor's edge, hiding the daughter of a rival Don? If the commission found out, it would be war. If Rocco found out, it would be a mutiny. But he couldn't let her go. Not just because of the mystery, but because when she looked at him with those defiant amber eyes, he felt something he hadn't felt in a decade. He felt challenged. Sophia emerged. She was wearing a plush white robe that was 5 sizes too big for her. She had rolled up the sleeves. Her face was scrubbed clean, revealing pale skin and a dusting of freckles across her nose. Her wet hair hung loose around her shoulders. She looked small, vulnerable, and strikingly beautiful. Stefano had changed as well. He wore black slack and a black cashmere sweater. The gun was gone, locked away. He was sitting by the fireplace, which was now crackling with gas flames. On the coffee table there was a spread of food: bread, cheese, olives, and a bottle of wine. Eat, he said. Sophia sat on the opposite sofa, curling her legs under her. She eyed the food hungrily, but hesitated. It's not poisoned, Stefano said dryly. He tore a piece of bread and ate it. See? Sophia reached out and took a piece of cheese. She ate it quickly, then another. She hadn't realized how starving she was. Who were the men in the apartment? She asked after a moment. Mercenaries, Stefano said. Hired guns. Likely paid by someone who wants to find this ledger you don't have. I really don't have it, Sophia said. Nonna left me nothing but a rosary and her old Bible. Stefano's eyes narrowed. A Bible? Yes, it's in my bag. May I see it? Sophia hesitated, then reached into her backpack, which she had brought out with her. She pulled out a heavy, leather-bound book. It was old, the spine cracking. Stefano took it. He didn't open it to read. He felt the cover. He ran his fingers along the spine. He weighed it in his hand. It's heavy, he noted. It's old. No, Stefano said. It's too heavy. He pulled a small pocket knife from his pocket. What are you doing? Sophia cried. Hush! Stefano carefully inserted the blade into the inner lining of the back cover. He sliced the leather. Sophia gasped. Inside the cover, sandwiched between the leather and the binding, was not cardboard. It was a thin, dense stack of microfiche films. Stefano held one up to the firelight. It was dense with numbers and names. "The ledger," Stefano whispered. "It wasn't a book. It was film." Sofia covered her mouth. I carried that for 20 years. I didn't know." "Matteo was smart," Stefano said, a grudging respect in his voice. "He knew paper burns. Film melts. But if you hide it in the word of God, maybe it survives." He looked at Sofia. The dynamic had changed again. She wasn't just a stray he was saving. She was the holder of the most dangerous weapon in New York. "This film," Stefano said, "contains the names of every corrupt official in the city from the last 2 decades. Some of those men are now senators, judges, maybe even FBI directors." "That's why they want me," Sofia realized. "They want to destroy it." "Or use it," Stefano said. "Blackmail is a powerful industry." He placed the film on the table. "Sofia, you have a choice." "What choice?" "I can give you money. A new identity. I can put you on a plane to Europe tonight. You disappear. I keep the film, and I deal with the war that is coming." He looked at her intensely. Or you stay," Stefano said. "You stay here, with me. We decode this. We find out who really killed your family, and we take them down. Together." The room was silent, save for the crackling fire. Sofia looked at the film, then at the man who was supposed to be her enemy. She saw the strength in him, but she also saw the solitude. He was a king on a chessboard, surrounded by pawns he couldn't trust. She thought of her nonna, dying in a hospice bed, whispering about justice. Sofia took a deep breath. She reached out and poured herself a glass of wine. "I don't speak French," she said. "Europe sounds lonely." Stefano's lips curved into the faintest ghost of a smile. It transformed his face, making him look younger, less like a statue and more like a man. "We stay then," he said. "We stay." As they clinked glasses, the elevator chimed. Stefano's smile vanished. He stood up instantly, moving in front of Sofia. The elevator doors didn't open. Instead, the intercom light blinked, red. "Boss," Bruno's voice came through, strained. "We have a problem. The police are downstairs, detectives. They have a warrant." "For what?" Stefano demanded. "For the kidnapping of Sofia Ricci." Stefano looked at Sofia. "Who called them?" Stefano asked. "Anonymous tip," Bruno said. "But boss, the lead detective is Miller. He's on Rocco's payroll." Stefano cursed. It was a setup. If the police found Sofia here, Stefano would be arrested for kidnapping. The film would be seized. The game would be over. "Stall them," Stefano ordered. "Buy me 5 minutes." He turned to Sofia. "We have to move, now. Where? You said this was a fortress." "Every fortress has a dungeon," Stefano said, grabbing her hand. He pulled her toward a panel in the wall that looked like a bookcase. He pressed a hidden latch, and the shelf swung open to reveal a dark service elevator. "This goes to the subway tunnels," Stefano said. "It's old, it's dirty, and it's dangerous. But it's the only way out." He looked at her, his hand squeezing hers. "Trust me." Sofia looked at the dark shaft, then back at his grey eyes. "I trust you," she said. And in that moment, the waitress and the Don crossed the line, from allies to partners. The service elevator didn't stop at a floor. It stopped at a grate. Stefano kicked it open, and the smell hit them instantly. Rust, stagnant water, and time. They were in the abandoned utility tunnels that ran beneath the subway lines, a labyrinth built in the 1920s and forgotten by everyone except the mole people and the mob. "Stay close," Stefano murmured, clicking on a small tactical flashlight attached to his keychain. "The floor is uneven." Sofia gripped his arm. Her oversized white robe was already streaked with grease. She had traded her boots for a pair of Stefano's running sneakers she found in the closet. They were too big, making her stumble. "Where are we going?" she whispered. "Chinatown," Stefano said. "Canal Street. There is a man there. He deals in information." They walked for 20 minutes in silence. The darkness was oppressive. Every scuttle of a rat sounded like a footstep. Every drip of water sounded like a gun cocking. "My father used to tell me stories about these tunnels," Stefano said, his voice echoing slightly. He said this is where the city really lives. The surface is just a mask. Your father, Sophia said, the bitterness returning to her voice. Did he tell you about the people he buried down here? Stefano stopped. He turned the light so it illuminated the wet brick wall, not his face. He didn't have to, Stefano said. I found them myself. He looked at her, the shadows casting hollows under his eyes. You think I enjoyed growing up as a prince of this city, Sophia? I was given a gun at 13. I was told to shoot a dog to prove I was a man. I didn't do it. My father beat me until I couldn't walk. I learned early, you either become the monster, or you become the meal. Sophia looked at him. For the first time, she saw the scar on his soul. He wasn't just a perpetrator. He was a survivor, just like her. I'm sorry, she said softly. Don't be, Stefano replied, turning back to the dark path. Sympathy gets you killed. Anger keeps you warm. Scene shift, the back room of the Jade Dragon. They emerged an hour later through a trap door in the storage room of a dry cleaner's on Canal Street. The air was thick with the smell of steam and chemicals. An old man sat at a workbench, fixing a mechanical watch. He didn't look up when the trap door opened. This was Mr. Wu. Stefano, Wu said, his voice like gravel. You look terrible, and you brought a stray. I need a reader, Wu. Microfiche. Wu paused, his tweezers hovering over a gear. He looked up, his eyes sharp behind thick glasses. That is old tech. Dangerous tech. Do you have it or not? Wu sighed and pointed to a curtain in the back. 5 minutes, then you leave. The triads are patrolling tonight. I don't want heat. Stefano pulled Sophia behind the curtain. On a dusty desk sat a bulky machine from the 80s. Stefano fed the power cord into the outlet. The machine hummed to life, casting a square of bright white light onto the desk. Sophia handed him the film with trembling fingers. Stefano slid the first sheet under the lens, the screen filled with typed names, dates, and dollar amounts. Look, Stefano pointed. 1978. The D'Amico construction contracts. He scrolled down. His finger traced the lines. May 12th, 1978. Payment authorized to the cleaners. $50,000. Target, D'Amico Estate. There, Sophia whispered, tears welling in her eyes. That's the order. Stefano scanned the column for the authorization signature. He expected to see GV, Giovanni Valenti, but the initials weren't GV. They were VM. Stefano froze. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. VM, Stefano breathed. Vittorio. Who is Vittorio? Sophia asked. Vittorio Moretti, Stefano said, his voice shaking with a rage she hadn't seen before. He was my father's consigliere. His best friend. He's Rocco's uncle. Stefano frantically scrolled through the other documents. June 1978. Assets of D'Amico territory transferred to VM Holdings. August 1982. Rossi family purge. Authorized by VM. It wasn't my father, Stefano said, staring at the screen. My father was the muscle. Vittorio was the brain. Vittorio manipulated the war. He told my father that Matteo was a traitor, so he could seize the territory for himself. He turned to Sophia. Your father wasn't a rat. My father was a patsy. Vittorio played them both against each other to build his own empire. Sophia stared at the screen. The hatred she had carried for the Valenti name for 20 years suddenly had nowhere to go. The monster wasn't the man standing next to her. The monster was the man sitting at the head of the table. Vittorio is still alive, Sophia said. Isn't he? Alive? Stefano let out a dark, humorless laugh. He's the head of the commission. He's the one who called the meeting tomorrow night. He's the one who sent the mercenaries to your apartment. Stefano pulled the film out of the machine and slipped it into his pocket. He knows you're alive, Sophia. That's why he's panicked. As long as you breathe, you are the rightful heir to the D'Amico seat on the commission. You can challenge his authority. I don't want a seat, Sophia said. I just want to live. The only way to live, Stefano said, gripping her shoulders, is to kill the king. He looked at his watch. Tomorrow night is the gala at the Met. All the 5 families will be there. Vittorio will be receiving a Man of the Year award from his legitimate charities. Stefano's eyes burned with cold fire. We are going to crash the party. Scene shift. The transformation. They left Wu's and went to a safe house in Chelsea, a small studio apartment kept by one of Stefano's loyal soldiers. You need to sleep, Stefano said. Tomorrow, we go to war. There was only one bed. They lay on top of the covers, fully clothed, back to back. In the dark, Sofia reached out and took his hand. Stefano. Yes. Thank you. Stefano squeezed her hand. Don't thank me yet. Tomorrow, I'm going to walk you into a room full of sharks. I'm not afraid of sharks, Sofia whispered, closing her eyes. I survived the fire. Stefano listened to her breathing even out as she fell asleep. He didn't sleep. He lay awake, plotting the death of the man who had raised him. The annual Italian-American Heritage Gala was the one night of the year when the underworld pretended to be high society. Senators shook hands with capos. Judges drank with racketeers. At the center of the room, holding court near the buffet, was Vittorio Moretti. At 70 years old, Vittorio looked like a benevolent grandfather. He had silver hair, a warm smile, and a tuxedo that cost more than a Honda Civic. He was laughing at a joke made by the police commissioner. Standing next to him, looking uncomfortable in a bow tie, was his nephew, Rocco. Relax, Rocco, Vittorio murmured, not losing his smile. You look like you're waiting for a subpoena. I don't like it, Uncle, Rocco grumbled. Stefano is missing. The girl is missing. The Russians say they lost them. Stefano is likely sulking, Vittorio said, sipping his wine, and the girl is a loose end. We will clip it eventually. Tonight is about legacy. Suddenly the chatter in the room died down. It started near the entrance and spread like a wave until the vast hall was silent. Vittorio turned towards the commotion. Walking down the grand staircase was Stefano Valenti. He looked impeccable in a black velvet tuxedo, his face set in stone, but no one was looking at Stefano. On his arm was a woman who looked like a queen from the old world. She wore a vintage gown of deep crimson silk, the color of spilled wine, the color of blood. It was backless, daring, and regal. Her dark hair was swept up, revealing a neck adorned with a heavy diamond necklace. But it was her eyes, amber and fierce, that made the old men in the room gasp. Dio mio, someone whispered. It's Elena. No, another voice murmured. It's the daughter. Vittorio's glass slipped from his fingers. It shattered on the marble floor. Crash. Stefano and Sofia walked through the crowd. The sea of people parted for them. They didn't stop until they stood 5 feet from Vittorio. Stefano, Vittorio said, recovering his composure. His voice was jovial, but his eyes were dead. We were worried about you. And who is this stunning creature? You know exactly who she is, Uncle, Stefano said, his voice amplified by the acoustics of the temple. Stefano turned to the crowd. He raised his voice. Gentlemen, honored guests, I apologize for the interruption, but I have a special presentation for the Man of the Year. Stefano, this isn't the place. Rocco stepped forward, his hand moving to his jacket. Easy, Rocco, Stefano said. Unless you want to explain to the commissioner why you're carrying a piece in a museum. Rocco froze. The police were watching. Stefano gestured to the projection screen set up for Vittorio's tribute video. Bruno, play it, Stefano said into his lapel mic. The screen flickered. The image of Vittorio's charity work disappeared. In its place, a grainy, high-contrast image of a document appeared, the D'Amico hit order, signed VM. A murmur ran through the crowd. The capos of the other families, the Gambinos, the Luccheses, stepped closer, squinting at the screen. What is this? Vittorio demanded, his face reddening. A forgery, is it? Stefano asked. The image changed, a bank transfer record, payment to the cleaners, account VM Trust. And this? Stefano pointed. And the next one? The screen cycled through the evidence. The betrayal of the Rossis, The theft of the unions, the systemic dismantling of the five families' code for personal profit. "Oh, you didn't just kill my father's best friend," Stefano said, stepping closer to Vittorio. "You tricked my father into doing it. You made the Valenti name synonymous with treachery, so you could rule from the shadows." Vittorio was trembling, not with fear, but with fury. The mask was slipping. "You ungrateful brat," Vittorio hissed. "I built this family. I saved it from your father's sentimentality. Business is war, Stefano. There is no code. There is only the winner." "You heard him," Stefano said to the room. "He admits it." The heads of the other families exchanged dark looks. In the Mafia, killing a rival is business. But manipulating a don into killing his own ally, that was a violation of the highest order. It was unstable. It was bad for business. "Rocco!" Vittorio screamed. "Kill them! Kill them all!" Rocco looked at his uncle. He looked at the screen. He looked at Stefano. Rocco had always been a bully. But he was loyal to the family. To the name Valenti. "You used us, Uncle?" Rocco asked, his voice thick. "You told me the D'Amicos were rats. You told me my dad died a hero. But you sent him to the Rossi ambush, didn't you?" "I did what had to be done," Vittorio spat. Rocco stepped back. He raised his hands. "I'm out." "You coward!" Vittorio lunged for Rocco's gun. Chaos erupted. The guests screamed and scattered. The security guards, confused as to who to protect, drew their weapons. Vittorio managed to rip the pistol from Rocco's holster. He didn't aim at Stefano. He aimed at Sofia. "If I go down," Vittorio roared, "the bloodline ends with me." Bang! The shot echoed like a cannon blast in the museum. Sofia didn't fall. Stefano had moved faster than thought. He had thrown himself in front of her. Stefano stumbled back, clutching his chest. A bloom of red appeared on his white shirt, stark against the black velvet. "Stefano!" Sofia screamed, catching him as he collapsed. Vittorio laughed, a manic sound. He raised the gun for a second shot. Bang! Bang! 2 shots rang out. Vittorio's head snapped back. He crumpled to the floor, dead before he hit the marble. Standing behind him was Bruno, smoking gun in hand. The room fell into a stunned silence. The music had stopped long ago. The only sound was Sofia's sobbing as she pressed her hands against Stefano's chest, trying to stem the bleeding. "Stay with me," she begged, her hands slick with his blood. "Please, Stefano, you promised we'd do this together." Stefano looked up at her. His grey eyes were hazy, losing focus. He reached up, his bloody hand cupping her cheek. "The debt," he whispered, coughing. "The debt is paid." His hand fell. His eyes drifted shut. "No!" Sofia screamed. "Someone help him! Help him!" Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The flashing red and blue lights bounced off the ancient Egyptian stones, illuminating the fallen king and the queen, who held him. 3 months later, the air in Sicily smelled different than New York. It smelled of lemon zest, dry earth, and salt. Stefano sat on the terrace of the Villa D'Amico, his leg resting on a stool. The cane leaning against the table was the only reminder of the bullet that had nearly pierced his heart. Well, that and the resignation letter he had sent to the commission. The deal had been simple. Rocco took New York, Stefano took his life, and Sofia. It was a trade that baffled the underworld, but for Stefano, it was the only deal he had ever made that truly mattered. "You're staring at the sun again?" a voice called out. Sofia walked out onto the terrace. She wore a simple white sundress, her hair loose in the wind. She didn't look like a waitress, and she didn't look like a victim. She looked free. She placed a bottle of wine on the table, a vintage Barolo. "Rocco sent it," she said, pouring 2 glasses, along with a note. "It just says, 'Don't come back.'" Stefano chuckled, a genuine warm sound. He always did have a way with words. Sofia sat beside him, handing him the glass. Her hand was steady. She looked at the man who had once been the scariest monster in her nightmares, and now was the only person she trusted with her soul. "Do you miss it?" she asked. The power? The fear? Stefano took a sip of the wine. He looked at her, at the amber eyes that had saved him. "I spent my whole life trying to be the architect," he said softly, "building a kingdom on a fault line. But I realized something in that hospital bed." "What?" "That a kingdom is just a cage with a nicer view." He reached out and took her hand, interlacing their fingers. "I don't want a kingdom, Sophia. I just want a home." Sophia smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. She looked out at the hills where her ancestors had walked, where the prayer had been born. "Santu Micheli," she whispered, but this time there was no fear in her voice. "Teni l'occhio malu lontano." Stefano kissed her forehead. "The evil eye is gone, amore," he promised. "We are finally invisible." And that is the legend of Stefano and Sofia. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful weapon in the Mafia isn't a gun or a bomb. It's a whisper. Stefano Valenti gave up an empire for a woman who was supposed to be his enemy, proving that even in the darkest organizations, the human heart is the one variable you can never predict. What do you think? Did Stefano make the right choice handing the keys to Rocco? Or should he have taken the throne for himself? I want to hear your theories in the comments below. Let's argue about it. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It helps us find more lost stories from the underworld. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a chapter of our true crime sagas. Until next time, keep your secrets close and your prayers closer. Thanks for watching.